At least 2 people were killed and 17 injured during a standoff with the Venezuelan military Friday. President Maduro closed the border with Brazil and has partially closed the Colombia border in an effort to stop humanitarian aid from entering the country. But opposition officials claim some aid has already made its way through the blockade, and more will be arriving later in the day. Meanwhile, Virgin Group founder Richard Branson organized a benefit concert in Colombia for the people of Venezuela. DJ Alesso was among the many stars to take the stage, pleading for the borders to be opened. Opposition leader Juan Guaido was also in attendance despite being banned from leaving the country. Markos Kounalakis is a foreign affairs columnist for McClatchy News and a visiting fellow at the Hoover Institution. He joins us now from San Francisco. So Markos, after these reports of these Venezuelan troops abandoning their post on the border with Colombia, do you get the sense that this is a sign that the military support for President Maduro is waning?
Well, it certainly is to some degree, Rena, but it's not a widespread abandonment of the military quite yet. I mean, you're seeing a few troops, and that's understandable. Those troops, those rank and file members of the military, have families that are suffering under this oppressive regime of Nicolas Maduro. 90% of the country is living in poverty. So it makes sense that some troops will defect, but we haven't seen the widespread, full sort of abandonment by the military of the Maduro regime. So these are early indications that there's some flip, but nothing really widespread yet.
So opposition leader Juan Guaido, not only did he cross the border to attend this concert, this benefit, he also spoke at the Colombia border. What do you think Guaido's next move is, and how risky is this for him to be actually crossing over the border at this point when he's been warned not to do it?
Yeah, everything he's doing is very risky right now because Maduro does not want to give up power. And so Guaido, as the recognized interim president of the Venezuelan Republic, is doing all that he can to build international support, to remain in the headlines, to be visible, because he is vulnerable. What Maduro does not want to do at the same time, and this is the one thing that maybe is protecting Guaido, is that he does not want to make a martyr of Juan Guaido. He wants to make sure that he takes away his power, tries to relate him as a puppet of the Americans and of Western powers, tries to make Guaido marginalized. But as you see in these images that you're showing right now, he is a beloved figure. He is someone who has very rapidly risen to the leadership position and to be able to actually represent the frustrations and the desires of those Venezuelans, both in the street but also at home, who are not protesting, who are suffering and have been suffering under the Maduro regime.
I've always been surprised, though, how Maduro's managed to hold on to power with the Venezuelan economy being in decline for decades. How much does that impact other Southern American countries, South American countries at this point?
Well, the impact, of course, on other countries are the most immediate ones that are next door, right? So Colombia is impacted in that there's 3.4 million refugees who've left Venezuela. How Maduro is actually partly able to maintain his power is that he is able to have that escape hatch for those who are dissatisfied or unable to survive within the country. Secondarily, he has a very tight grip and control on the military. The military leadership is sworn and quite loyal to Maduro and his regime because they are benefiting personally and also in terms of their families from the Maduro regime. And finally, he has some very important international benefactors and supporters, whether it's China that has been supporting the economy because of the amount of money that they've been giving Venezuela for their vast oil reserves and the vast amount of oil exports that they're able to pay off those loans with. Cuba is supporting with material help. They've got doctors that they're trading for oil, again, oil that the Cubans are unable to pay for but are able to trade for. And then finally, the Russians are also benefactors. They've been very supportive in terms of developing the types of petroleum distillation areas where they have refineries and the like in Venezuela. And finally, I'd say that these benefactors that I just mentioned, Cuba, China, Russia, and others as well in the region, are interested in not giving the United States more influence within the region. And so blocking the United States is an important political move for those other powers.
And it's clearly not just a charity event for China, Russia, and Cuba. Venezuela, as you mentioned, is sitting on one of the largest oil reserves. At this point, what does the country need to do? How do they restore their economy?
Well, oil is a big part of it. You know, when the previous leader, Hugo Chavez, who was before Maduro, who was Maduro's benefactor, really, took power, the amount of oil that was being processed and exported was more than 2 times what they're currently able to produce. So there's been a real sinking of the economy, not just the economy in the consumer level, but also the economic basis of Venezuela's strength, which is this known proven oil reserve, the largest in the world. If you recall, OPEC was begun by Venezuela. So OPEC wouldn't even exist without the Venezuelan government. So if there is the ability of this government or any other government to finally be able to take advantage of these true reserves, and that is, I think, the goal of Guaido. It has been the failure of Maduro, has been to really figure out how to either sell those reserves and be able to profit from them, or be able to return Venezuela to the international economy in a much more stable way.
And we know 100% where the Trump administration stands. They have been vocal about their support for Juan Guaido. Why are they so vested in Guaido, and why would they like a regime change at this point?
Well, if we're talking about the politics of it, I mean, certainly President Trump is looking for any type of international global win. I mean, he's looking at North Korea this week, of course, as a global win for him if he's able to get a deal. If he's able to actually do what I think everyone in the United States would like to see, which is a shift in that regime in Venezuela, that would certainly be considered a political win. And finally, you know, the Trump administration, when it came into power in the United States, and when Rex Tillerson was the Secretary of State, he was very clear about how the United States wanted to assert and return to the Monroe Doctrine. In other words, the Monroe Doctrine defined Latin America as a part of the United States' sphere of influence, and it's under our control, and really we want to make sure that no other countries are able to enter into the region and affect that sphere of influence that the United States wants to control in a continuing fashion.
Markos Kounalakis, so grateful you could join us, Markos.
Thank you.